And let me thank you guys and welcome you to today's program. Today is a very timely time, and this period is a very timely period to be having this program. And our special guest is none other than Bruce Fein. Bruce Fein is an attorney in the United States of America, and is someone that a lot of you already know very well. But just in case you do not know, he's an attorney representing the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, and Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. We are going to be discussing with him a very important document that is now gone viral, which is an injunction he has filed against the Federal Republic of Nigeria. With me today on this media chat is Mazi Ezoke of Njenje Media. He will be helping us do justice to this discussion. It's always, these are kind of discussions that I'm not able to do alone. So you go and bring some people that they are shaped, I call them coconut head, not because they are coconut head, but because their head is shaped like this. I'm going to try as much as possible to be very serious today, but there's so much in that man's head that when it comes to serious matters like this, it's the kind of person I go to. Bruce Fein, you're welcome to this media chat.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Mazi Ezoke, you are please very welcome to today's media chat. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Chidi, and thank you very much, Bruce Fein. I believe we would have a very well-informed conversations to unpick the nitty-gritties as contained in that document. So, Chidi, you might go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Bruce Fein, I wouldn't want to mess things up. I want you to do us the honors of explaining to us this document, which is now in the media space. What is it all about?
The origins of the case go back to 2017 when President Donald Trump approved the sale of 12 A-29 Super Tucano military aircraft to Nigeria for $600 million, despite the fact that we have had longstanding amendments to the Foreign Assistance Act, they're called the Leehy amendments, that prohibit the transfer of weapons to any foreign security service guilty of egregious human rights violations. It is quite obvious, based upon President Buhari's statements insinuating he's involved in conducting a second edition of the 67-70 genocide of Biafrans, that these weapons will not be used against international terrorists. They'll be used to continue the genocide against Biafrans in the Southeast. And the case that we have brought is against those in the executive branch of the United States responsible for the delivery of the A-29 military aircraft. And 6 of them have been delivered. 6 have not been delivered. We believe that at least we have a chance, even by highlighting the apparent conflict between the weapons and the Leahy amendments, that the Biden administration, which has professed a commitment to human rights, unlike President Trump administration, may well seek the return of the Super Tucanos and cease delivery of the remaining 6. There's also, I think, a great deal of sympathy with the Democratic-controlled Congress about stopping any weapons sales to Nigeria. These considerations were not available when the weapons sales were initially approved in 2017, because President Trump was scornful of human rights, and the Republican Congress was not going to challenge anything that President Trump did. And of course, in 2017, Congress was controlled by Republicans, not Democrats. So the gist of our lawsuit is that the delivery and the sale of the Super Tucanos was in violation of the law. The Leehy amendments would prohibit these weapons transfers to foreign security services guilty of egregious violations of human rights. And we believe it's transparent. The human rights are compiled every day on the ground with videos and otherwise documented by independent human rights groups like Amnesty International. And therefore, we're asking an injunction against any further delivery of the 6 remaining Super Tucanos Nigeria and a return of the 6 that have been delivered back to the United States. The lawsuit, however, is not filed in isolation. We have a larger, I think, plans with IPOB to try to move the political barometer towards an independence referendum in the Southeast, similar to one that was offered South Sudan in 2011, because historically, legally, and otherwise, it's obvious that the Fulani-controlled government cannot tolerate, a free and thriving Biafran community. And we think that under international law, such a referendum is clearly justified, and the lawsuit is a part of the quest to shine light on that imperative.
All right, thank you. I know there's a lot of explaining that you have to do to make us understand the implications of that junction. But Mazi Ezeoke, I know you are someone who sees behind the letters and who takes time to try to dissect information. From your point of view, what do you think about this document and this injunction coming at a time like this, in based on what is going on in Nigeria?
Well, I think the document in part is...
Sorry, Bruce. I was actually directing the question to Mazi Ezeoke, and in answering the question, I'm sure he would have something to direct at you. So Mazi Ezeoke, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Chidi. I think, reviewing the document, looking at the document under review, and I can see that the issue in contention now are 2 things. I mean, this is as Bruce has said at the beginning, a case against the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, and, Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. And it's centered on the A-29 Super Tucano jet that's been sold to Nigeria under President Donald Trump. But again, before I go any further, I'll even push my question back to Bruce here. I must note that going through this document and seeing that 6 jet has already been delivered, and just opposing the support IPOB, quote unquote, gave the former president of America, then my question to Bruce will be, we know about the Senator Leehy, law or act as amended. We obviously know the content that for nations or countries that use these military hardwares acquired from foreign countries to oppress their people, that they should not be sold to them. Now, could you tell us, at the point where these discussions happened under President Donald Trump, and these agreement was reached, was it that IPOB at that point did not reach you as their legal counsel in order to obviously advise to say, at that point, it's better for this deal not to go into negotiations at all? Isn't it better, wouldn't it have been better to, at that point, stopped the sale as opposed to going to court to recall 6 already delivered and stopping the delivery of 6 about to be delivered?
I wouldn't quarrel with your observation. I don't want to fault find IPOB. They have many, many things to address. when you're the subject of genocide, your concentration can be divided. I simply was not contacted at that time. A lawyer doesn't create his clients come to lawyers. So that's just a description of what in fact transpired. But I'm not inclined to fault find others. I don't know what the circumstances were, but ideally, yeah, a lawsuit would have been filed within days after the sale was approved. It's obviously more difficult to undo something than to prevent it from happening in the first instance. But I think serendipitously, in some sense, the belated filing is a little bit to our advantage. First of all, it's open and notorious that President Trump was very, very hostile to human rights, and he wouldn't care whether or not the weapons were utilized to commit genocide. He used very derogatory and indeed vile language at one point to describe Nigerian immigrants, you may recall. Moreover, in 2017, the Republicans were the dominant force in Congress, and they were reluctant to do anything that was opposed to President Trump. Now we have a Congress controlled by the Democrats, and they also are considering obstructing companion kinds of weapons, not necessarily the Super Tucanos, because of concerns over human rights. You may recall during the Obama administration that there were a holdup of some Cobra helicopters because of concerns over human rights by the security services that would use them. So politically, the timing is probably more to our advantage, but legally in a court of law that doesn't look at the politics, yeah, it's more difficult to undo the transfer than to have it not occur in the first instance. But I want to repeat, I'm not here to fault find IPOB.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just before we go ahead, I want to recognize the presence in our midst of Omoyele Sowore. Omoyele Sowore is a resident of US and a citizen of Nigeria who has had run-ins with the federal government of Nigeria. He's been a victim like your client and knows firsthand what kind of institution is the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and we're pleased to have him in our midst. Mr. Omoyele Sowore, you're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Chidi, for bringing me on. I also want to thank our other guests and panelists. I'm sorry that I came in a little late. There's always something happening in Nigeria every minute. So I got pulled away to another issue, which is also a human rights issue. Because I was, you're aware we have some people who are in detention because they put on Buhari's t-shirts. So, Dr. Chidi, pardon that I may not be able to turn on my camera. I'm laying down because I have stomach flu. So, but it's good to be here, and just take it away as usual, and we'll talk about what we know from this end, what is going on, and why we think the lawsuit that's just been filed by Bruce Fein is very timely and important, because I think we have to understand that Nigeria is going through full-blown tyranny at this point. When you have rogue regimes who go out of their ways to abduct citizens, kidnap people from outside the law, outside international law. Everything must be done to stop them before they start carrying out full-blown genocide. So they are doing them already in some small, they're carrying out massacres now here and there, but ultimately they want to go in that direction, I think. So what Bruce Fein has done, I read part of it, right, is most welcome. I mean, with what IPOB has done in filing this suit, I'm not a lawyer to determine whether it would survive or succeed or not, but the fact that it's out there is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Moele Shore. Bruce Fein, I'm going to ask you a question like the layman on the streets of Nigeria. And I want you to give some confidence to the man on the street in Nigeria who sees the government of Nigeria consistently and persistently over time flout court orders and just go ahead and do whatever they like, ignoring international laws and statutes. What confidence do they have that the American government is able to carry out, assuming this case succeeds, that the American government is able to compel the Nigerian government to abide by whatever the laws in America ask it to do?
Well, I think that the respect that is commanded by United States, federal courts is greater internationally, certainly, than in Nigeria's compromised judicial system. And the price that the government would pay in Nigeria for flouting a U.S. court order is a different order of magnitude than disobeying, their own laws. I would add as well that Nigeria has to recognize that the United Nations Security Council, under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, could conclude that the flouting of law and the genocide in the Southeast is so horrendous that it creates a danger to international peace and security. Those are the magic words that authorize the Security Council to use military force to intervene to rectify the situation. And I've suggested that it could be that the Security Council, when presented with proper evidence, could mandate a referendum for sovereignty for Biafra because of the threat to international peace and security that is created by President Buhari's current campaign of genocide and flouting every law that would arrest his ability to rule by decree and implement, the Fulani Sharia standards that already are present in 12 of Nigeria's states. So Nigeria has to be concerned about the ramifications. It's not able, I do not believe, to thrive if it's the subject of complete international isolation, being treated as a pariah country similar to South Africa when it was operating under apartheid. There are remedies, as it happened with South Africa, that could result in the expulsion of Nigeria from the United Nations for not subscribing to United Nations treaties like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, I don't want to be overly, Pollyannish and thinking that we can snap our fingers and Nigeria will become a government that complies with the laws, but we have to do our best, and certainly experience teaches that it is possible to convince governments that they better turn square corners if they don't want to avoid, complete, international ostracism. And I say one example is South Africa, which led to the transition away from apartheid into Nelson Mandela's release.
Okay, so Chidi, may I take the next question? Because
go ahead.
In his comments just now, he mentioned about mandating referendum. He mentioned about that. Then I have two questions for you, Bruce Fein, here. One is, you talked about mandating referendum, and I would want to know, is referendum part of the mandate from your clients to demand via these courts, via this suit? And if yes, second question thereof will be, is United States of America able to intervene in another jurisdiction in a different continent to affect any push for referendum?
It's a wonderful question. The lawsuit itself kind of sets the stage for a referendum, but it doesn't ask for one. It's because a referendum is not the remedy for illegally selling and transmitting super tucanos to Nigeria. But the intellectual foundations are set by the lawsuit. The referendum can be authorized by the United Nations Security Council. The United States itself was instrumental in securing a referendum for South Sudan in 2011, which basically established a separate sovereignty from Sudan. And that was a referendum that was organized and conducted by the United Nations Electoral Unit. So there is precedent on that score. The United States would not be acting unilaterally, but under, say, the United Nations Charter, and Nigeria is a member of that charter, Chapter 7 would authorize a referendum of the type that I've described. And it has happened in the past. And also think about this, it's not at all an anomaly. Even in countries that don't necessarily suffer from the same kind of strife and upheaval that we're witnessing in Nigeria, Britain offered Scotland an opportunity to vote independence. Canada offered Quebec an opportunity to vote for independence. So this is the customary way in which the groups that seem to be disfranchised or alienated from an existing sovereignty are able to choose a different course. When Nigeria became independent in 1960, it never followed the decolonization principle of the United Nations General Assembly, which is to give the peoples involved in decolonization a right of self-determination. Who are the peoples involved? Well, it's clearly going back to 1913 with the British amalgamation. You had separate peoples who had been forced under one umbrella. And it's a little bit of an oversimplification. You had the Fulani, the Yoruba, the Biafrans, all forced out of the divide and conquer theory of the British under one sovereignty for the convenience of the colonial ruler. But they never, ever were given a chance in 1960 to say, do I really want to continue under this British forced umbrella, as opposed to deciding to go their separate way in a peaceful transition. And that is exactly what we're trying to remedy now, where it's been shown beyond any kind of doubt that the Fulani's livelihood is plunder, killing, and maiming Biafrans. It's unfortunate, but we can't blind our eyes to what all the world and all experience teach. And that's the kind of historical evidence that justifies a referendum for separate sovereignty. It would be best for all involved if this could happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Omoyele Sowore, would you want to comment on this flouting of court orders by the Nigerian government? And you have an experience with this. It's happened to you a couple of times. Could you just give us an insight into how the Nigerian government has perpetrated this a lot of times? You just told us that you came from, you've been monitoring the situations at the court where I'm sure there was a court order and it was flouted before. And just give us a little bit of insight before we continue.
So, well, the Nigerian state is a paradise for men and women in office, either elected, selected, or appointed, who engage in impunity. But the Buhari regime is been single-handedly probably been the worst in recent times. What it turns out is that this has been his modus operandi. In 1984 and 1985, that was between, he got into power in 1983, I think around December. So, but his real tenure was between 1984 and 85, and he was kicked out of power in a coup in 1985, August specifically, it was in August 1985. And then he was using the Nigerian Security Organization, known as the NSO, to carry out the same things, enforce disappearances, illegal arrests, and disregard for lawful orders of courts. And that's exactly what they're doing today. They did it to me. I was granted bail twice. I was released, and on one occasion they came to court and abducted me. We have several of these cases of just disregard for lawful court orders. Sadly, also the judges are not strong enough to stand by their orders because they're afraid. And most importantly, most of them are engaged in corruption, so their hands are not clean. So they use all these things on the ground to put pressure on them. So with regards to whether they will respect a judgment obtained in the US, I guarantee you they will, if it's something that would affect the fortune of, say, buying weapons from the US. They really need weapons from the US. And if it's a decision by a US district court against them, they'll have no option than to respect it. And the US district court, if it takes a position on the Nigerian state and the rogue elements within the state, it could extend sanctions against them. So they know all these things, and this is the reason why I think this is in the right direction. I'm more on the side of direct action regarding these criminals. That people should come out en masse and put boots on the ground and end this culture and era of impunity. But I also think we cannot rely on just one method and one strategy, and one idea how to go about it. So it's important in that regard that we just understand the kind of people we're dealing with. I would imagine that you guys are already aware that even when a judge gave an order last week that Nnamdi Kanu should be allowed access to his counsels twice a week, immediately they started flouting the order. They didn't allow them to see him last week. I've not checked with them to see if they were able to see him today. But that's the way it is in Nigeria right now. With regards to the discussion around referendum, I think if things escalate over here, the United Nations will be forced to tell us, or will be forced to declare a position on what they think will solve the problem. Because the last thing the world needs right now is an armed conflict in Nigeria that will completely overwhelm the entire African continent, particularly the West African region. And that might help push the UN in the direction of intervening in a way that say, hey, wait a minute. We understand the issues, and since you don't have leaders that can solve the problem, permit people to decide whether they want to be part of this, your country or not. The question is, can you also trust these foreign powers to organize a free and fair referendum in Nigeria? That's the question that we have to answer or discuss, in another symposium in the future. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Chidi, again, permit me here. Thank you very much, Sore, for that insight. And if I come back to, I want to stay with these documents that I think is a 12-page document that's under review that I've gone through and I've read. And I'm just thinking, Bruce here, again, thank you for the insight given so far. May I ask you this question, which is, you are aware the role played by the current American president, Joe Biden, regarding the condemnation and working against British interests as it concerned the South African apartheid regime. Now, coincidentally, in this time as it concerns Nigeria, You've made a reference, kind of a comparative analysis before to it. My question to you now will be, knowing the antecedents of Joe Biden in the past, do you think that Joe Biden might play the same role he played then as a senator, but now sitting as a president, to see that that manner of structure that existed in South Africa that appears to be somewhat in some, in some quarters, as some people may argue, do you think he might play a role in, in seeing that that is stopped?
Well, certainly it would be consistent with President Biden's overall philosophy towards human rights. Remember, in South Africa, we had what was called the South Africa Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act of 1986. And as part of the strategy to dismantle apartheid, the United States imposed very, very strict sanctions on South Africa that very much crippled its economy. And for a variety of reasons, ultimately it succeeded. And I do think that President Biden, when confronted with the horrors in Nigeria, could well sponsor similar kind of legislation that would target Nigeria until and unless it had either held referendums or certainly rewritten its constitution to provide the Biafrans with the kind of autonomy necessary to protect themselves. At present, they are virtually politically helpless to prevent the kind of genocide and daily humiliations, assault, and injuries that are inflicted by the Fulani-controlled government. And it's especially, I think, favorable on that score that it is very clear, I believe, that Nigeria now has become a haven for international terrorism, bleeding through Boko Haram and otherwise into countries like Cameroon, Mali, Niger, which is, of course, a very high priority of not only this administration, but others as well. So it's certainly a possibility, and I should be concerned to President Buhari. The United States, with President Biden, is not indifferent to human rights. We've got a different commander-in-chief than President Trump, who could have cared less about human rights. Indeed, even when we had our Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi assassinated by the Saudi Arabian crown prince, said, well, we make money selling weapons, so that's not going to stop. But that's not the regime we have with President Biden.
So basically, it means that the Nigerian president must have issues and concerns to worry regarding issues surrounding human rights abuses, as long as Joe Biden remains the president of America.
That is correct, and that's reinforced by the fact that we have a Democrat-controlled Congress, and the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Robert Menendez, has clearly indicated human rights is of major concern to him. And that's why, as we're speaking, there are a host of other, what I might companion weapons deals that Congress is now holding up because of concerns over human rights violations in Nigeria. I say under President Obama, and remember, Joe Biden was President Obama's vice president. We refused to sell Cobra helicopters to Nigeria because of human rights concerns. And that was when Vice President Biden was instrumental in the inner circle in providing advice to President Obama.
Yeah, but if we go back to during Obama's time, the former the governing party then in Nigeria, called the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, actually accused the opposition then, that is the party of President Muhammadu Buhari, as being the brain behind the non-sale of arms to Nigeria to fight then Boko Haram and other insurgent groups then. So do you think it had anything at that point to do, do you think it had more to do with the political parties and the oppositions coming to America to influence that decision? Or do you think under Obama's presidency, it was more and categorically to do with human rights abuses?
Well, I think it related to human rights abuses, to be candid, that have been, unfortunately, almost epidemic for many years. It rises and falls, but I think it's reached a new plateau with President Buhari, who had given kind of a dress rehearsal for what he was going to do when he was a military dictator in 1983 and 1985. A leopard doesn't change its spots. But I do think in 2016, the administration felt that these kinds of weapons, oftentimes that are hijacked to oppose or to be used against political opponents rather than international terrorists. So all I think 2016 shows is that the United States has indicated a willingness to say we're not selling weapons to countries that are unable to keep the weapons out of the hands of those who are oppressing Biafrans and others in Nigeria.
I have a question. I want you to help us here and be clear on that. A lot of times there's been a boast that the American government is really not concerned about the issues in Biafra, okay? But I hear you say that the government of America has actually, or is deliberating, or maybe you should make it clearer, that they have stopped some arms deals that were already in progress. Would you want to clarify on that?
Yes, there are a lot of other, weapons sales of ammunition. And I think some of the Nigerian press has reported on this, that have been put in abeyance, if you will, because of concerns that have been voiced by various members of Congress. And say that's even though it wasn't successful, that was used by Congress to try to block sales of weapons to Saudi Arabia. So there definitely is a constituency in Congress that takes the Leahy Amendment seriously. After all, Senator Leahy himself is chairman of a very important committee, the Senate Appropriations Committee, and Congress feels especially solicitous of statutes named after one of its prominent members to ensure that it's properly enforced. And the language is quite clear. If you have security units engaged in egregious violations of human rights, they can't get U.S. weapons. And anybody who has the least familiarity of the ongoing convulsions and strife in Nigeria knows of the human rights violations. They're daily, and you can see them in video. It's not complicated on that score, even though it's rather grisly to look at it. And I do think that in the United States, we do have a human rights constituency. It's not the only one. There are other elements that come into play. But to be candid, Nigeria is not a country that basically advances our larger United States global interests, if you will, on national security matters. Mr. Buhari, if you want to say it, insofar as the United States has become at least suspect at majority Muslim countries after 9/11, he's taken Nigeria into the Organization of Islamic Countries. He clearly tolerates, if not supports, the 12 states with Sharia law, which is not friendly to the United States. He may well be aligned with Boko Haram, since all these ransom payments and kidnappings and then releases, seem very odd. At the time he was arresting and kidnapping Nnamdi Kanu, he's releasing over 1,000 former so-called Boko Haram members who suddenly had miraculously redeemed themselves with recanting Boko Haram murderous ambitions, and released them all without any court order. So all of these kind of elements come into play, I think, to suggest that the current regime of Mr. Buhari is not one that's friendly towards the interests of the United States, not only in Africa, but globally as well.
You see sorry, Moses, okay. The concern that the average Nigerian has, and Omoyele already talked about this too when he was talking about how far we can trust foreign countries. We did have a very, very important protest a couple of months ago, the NSAS protest, which involved the largest population bracket, which is the youth in Nigeria. And a lot of killing came out of that protest. And you also confirmed here right now about the awareness of the United States of the atrocities that are committed in Nigeria, which is all over the internet. But it seems like, I don't want to say that the United States pays a lip service to these things, because people seem to wonder how many people need to die, how many of this mayhem, what's the extent to which it has to get before we see a decisive action from the United States government.
Well, I mean, I understand the United States is not a saint. Countries have interests, realpolitik, oftentimes trumps human rights. But remember, even in South Africa, Nelson Mandela was not released overnight. It was a long struggle. And it's very, very tragic that people die or are maimed in the interim. But, international action doesn't happen overnight. Say, South Sudan had a referendum in 2011, but in the interim, there are a lot of people who died and they didn't come back to life with a referendum. So that's all I can say. For those who are confronting, the danger and the possibility of death every day, I understand it's of little solace, but I'm just describing reality out there. This is not a problem that's unique to Biafrans. We're confronting now other peoples around the globe, Uyghurs in China, the Rohingya in Myanmar, the minorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo, many other people, unfortunately, confronting similar kinds of crises as Biafrans. We need to focus as fast as we can to move as quickly as we can. Sometimes it's kind of freakish things that happen and give life to a particular political momentum. A particularly graphic video. You may recall years ago during the Vietnam War, we had this picture of a young naked girl running down the streets of Saigon with napalm burning her hair. And that kind of brought the war to a close far faster than otherwise. Things like that do have an impact, but part of the approach and the reason for the lawsuit is the more that we can get people to understand and focus on this problem, because it's oftentimes buried in the minds of many who know nothing about what's happening in Nigeria, the more likely we'll get the consensus and the ostracism needed to bring this tragedy to an end and finally culminate in an independent Biafran country, so we don't go back another 30 years and we have another reenactment of the genocide, just like we're doing now following the 67-70 war.
So would you say that the actions of the people who are in the country and who are experiencing these atrocities, their actions would help to speedy the reaction of other nations to what is going on in the country? Like, through, I acknowledge the importance of this legal strategy, but would you agree that the actions of the people within the country would help to speeden the effect of the legal action?
Yes, there's no doubt that it would. On the other hand, I'm very, very cognizant of the fact that the brutality of the Buhari administration means someone who stands up and makes a protest and calls attention to the atrocities risks being exterminated. We know what the ability and the inclination of the Buhari administration is to retaliate. Nnamdi Kanu is a perfect example. They go to his home in 2017, try to murder him, take guns and kill many of those present at his premises. And his maltreatment today, they may try to kill him through the withholding of medical care that's urgently needed. So it takes brave people, but that's to be commended. I remember perhaps one of the bravest things I ever saw was Tank Man. You remember during China and Tiananmen Square, man just laid down and said, "The tank, you go ahead and run over me." It wouldn't do it. They knew what would have the international reaction. So yes, to the extent that the Biafrans can stand and make it clear, they are not accepting this because the administration of Buhari wants everyone to be silent. So no one hears, see no evil, do no evil. It just doesn't make any ripple effect. But the fact that you're standing up and protesting despite the risk does focus international attention on it and will accelerate the ability to bring this tragedy and the genocide to a close ASAP.
Maz, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, for the answers provided so far. And, sitting down, listening to, obviously, you are not in a position of authority to have taken some certain decisions, but when we talk about America as a country and its government, you mentioned about Obama before, then I'm sitting down here thinking, if American government with all their arsenals in terms of intelligence gathering and saying these things that is coming from the governments today, then one would then want to question the support this same American government under Barack Obama that did not sell arms to Nigeria at that point, who apparently knew what was also probably was in the offing. Then I question how come, that administration gave so much support to the realization and to the point that this current administration came to power.
Well, I believe that, as you well know, throughout Africa and certainly Nigeria, corruption is a huge problem. And corruption under the administration of Goodluck Jonathan, maybe reached epidemic proportions. And there's an idea, well, if you look at something that's bad, you think anything that will replace it will be an improvement. Failing, certainly in this instance, to examine what Mr. Buhari had done when he was a military dictator. And nothing since then indicated that he'd converted to being a Democrat. So the idea was, well, at least we'll strike a blow against corruption in Nigeria by supporting the opposition. Then failing to see, we ended up a cure worse than the disease. It's not unique to Nigeria. I think if you look what we did in Libya, we went in, overthrew Gaddafi, and now we have chaos. It's worse than it was then. So there can be blunders made by the United States. Even if the goal is benevolent, there oftentimes can be myopic. And I think that clearly was true with regard to supporting, a change of administration from Goodluck Jonathan to Buhari.
Well, I'm happy you said that somewhat, but it means I can put it out there that American misjudged. And because when you mentioned about corruption, actually, many commentators, it's remained to be proven or seen, but many people would agree, and many people do say, which I believe you do read as well, that corruption under this government made Jonathan's like a baby learning how to crawl.
Yeah, yes, a wonderful analogy, yeah.
Well, okay, so having said that, now let me quickly point something. Now in Nigeria, we have about 875 million naira, $875 million deal, arms deal with America. I think you alluded to it before, that is slightly being questioned now. But again, funny enough, in Nigeria, it's a place where funny things do happen. I put this. The information minister says federal government not aware of 875 million ammunition deal with the US. The National Assembly says Nigerian National Assembly plans to meet US Congress over 875 weapon deal stoppage. Now, I mean, the funny side of it that in one government. One doesn't know, the one that ought to know the information does not know that this information exists. And the other is saying, okay, we are going to meet the Americans to discuss this. Now, my question to you is this conversation happening now, both the denial and the one trying to meet the US Congress, is it happening because of the actions you and your clients have taken?
Well, I think there are many factors usually contribute to important developments. One factor alone usually is not completely decisive. But I do think the actions that we have taken, which is not only including the lawsuit, but we've written letters as well to the Secretary of State, to probably half a dozen members of Congress, have called attention to what has transpired, in the Southeast. And I think it's kind of got a boost, if you will, in a tragic way, with the kidnapping, the torture of Nnamdi Kanu, which further underscores, I believe, the lawlessness of the Buhari administration. And I do think that's why overall there's a reassessment of our approach towards Nigeria that is kind of crystallized. And the lawsuit, I think, is part of that, that influence.
Okay, thank you. So, Chidi, pardon me, I asked this question, then I'll let you
go ahead.
Let me play the devil's advocate here. And in playing that devil's advocate, Bruce Fein, I have the following questions for you, which is, now, does it concern you the implication of what an arms embargo could do to Nigeria, bearing in mind that Nigeria is and will be needing ammunition to fight bandits, ISWAP, Boko Haram. The last one, which everyone agrees that they do not want to touch, which is the herdsmen, or which we locally here call killer herdsmen. If this is stopped, is that not going to jeopardize the fight against these monsters trying to destroy the lives of people within the entity called Nigeria?
Well, a couple of responses to the question. First, I don't believe that the Buhari administration is serious about trying to curtail Boko Haram or the herdsmen. They acquiesce if they don't encourage these brutalities. Ask yourself, on how many occasions has the Nigerian government prosecuted a Fulani for murdering a Biafran? And I think the answer is zero, complete zero. So what is it that we're preventing? The government isn't going to be using weapons against them anyway. You may recall that Buhari himself was a spokesperson selected by Boko Haram as far back as 2012. And there's certainly substantial grounds to believe that Buhari really was suggesting that that he would, in supporting Boko Haram, ensure that the Goodluck Jonathan administration had no success at all, because only a northerner could sort of bring Boko Haram to account. And that was a campaign, at least theme, in 2000, for that led to Mr. Buhari's election. So it seems to me that the arms embargo is not going to curtail, to the extent that there's any ongoing effort to arrest Boko Haram and the herdsmen in any event. Further, the fact is that even arms embargoes, as you know, they're very seldom completely successful. There are all sorts of international black market deals with arms. It's unfortunate, but I've never known a war to end because one side said we don't have any bullets anymore. Yet you're able to find scoundrels to provide it anyway. But at least the United States shouldn't be complicit in this. But I say the larger question is, no, this will not at all. An arms embargo would not compromise the fight against these international outlaws.
Okay, thank you. So Chidi, I yield to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to come to you, Omoyele Sowore, because there's a reason why we needed your input in this discussion. You are a resident of United States of America. The the Congress intervened in your case at the time. You had senators fight concerning your case and are still fighting because your case is still in court. But the area I really wanted you to help us out here with is the fact that you are a friend to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. You held meetings with him, particularly the meeting you held in New York, which I was present at, and you have kept very close monitoring of activities concerning Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. We saw how you showed up in court. You have been advocating for protests, and you have actually called for a protest on the 5th of August, which is just 3 days away. What is the essence of this protest right now? Because I hear Bruce talking about there is the need for action from people on the ground, which helps the legal project. But what is the real essence for calling this protest on the 5th of August? And how does it concern Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and all of the issues that are going on right now in Nigeria?
Well, I think coming down, attempting to show that the Biafrans are unified, they can shut down Nigeria if Nnamdi Kanu does not receive justice, is an earmark of the strength of the Biafran people to say, you know, we've crossed the Rubicon, we're not going back. We're insisting that our leader is released and that we're moving forward in a way that is going to guarantee our freedom and independence forever. We're not going to go risk, you know, another hope, a triumph of hope over experience, suggesting, oh, you can put the pieces of Nigeria back together again. But this mass demonstration of support is not unique. There are various ways in which other peoples have communicated, you know, opposition to what's going on by their government. I remember in Chile, people would they would sound kitchen instruments and make noise or hold out candles, all ways in which they could peacefully indicate to the world and to their government, no, they are not supporting what's ongoing, even if the government's denying them a referendum or a vote. And it's that kind of solidarity that's the purpose of these kinds of demonstrations. And I think also it psychologically makes everyone a little more reassured. In numbers, there is psychological repose that, well, we're all in this together. You know, if we don't hang together, we'll hang separately. And that's what these kinds of demonstrations are calculated to fortify.
All right, Omoyele Sowore, I don't know if you are able to contribute on this.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that ultimately what these dictators and tyrants are most afraid of is not the sanction from their friends. When I say their friends, I'm talking about the US and other members of a powerful international community, because they all have interests in sustaining Nigeria the way it is today. Some for reasons of business, some for reasons of colonialism or neo-colonialism. So if you want to really get out of these issues, these problems, you have to put boots on the ground. And they respond more favorably to when people are protesting, you know, as far as these issues are concerned. If you don't protest, who cares about you? If you don't create ruckus, who cares about you? The international community does care more when people do take action. And August 5 in that regard for us, one is the second anniversary of revolution now. We've always called for a revolution. instead of even this whole idea of breaking up Nigeria, because we know people who are running Nigeria down from all parts of the country, Igbos, Yoruba, Ibibio, Numa, anybody, Hausas, Fulanese. And we're more interested in breaking the back of this oppressive class as opposed to fighting in silos. So, but 2021 August 5th action would be dedicated mostly to victims of unlawful political detentions. Kanu was not, one of the people we were fighting for. Ezak was part of the people we're going to fight for, but they've now released Ezak. A lot of people reached out to me that it might have been because we put him up there on the list, and we have Sunday Boho, we have those 12 people who are detained at the DSS who were picked up at Sunday Boho's house, and also the 5 young guys, including a blind saxophonist, who were arrested at Dunamis Church for wearing anti-Buhari t-shirts. So that's what it is, and we're calling on our Biafran brothers, who completely support their plan to shut down their markets, engage in peaceful protests or marches. We just want them to start from August 5 as opposed to August 11. If you ask me, this is well done, it's well coordinated, and it's the unity of the oppressed, which we always call for. These people can't handle us if we unite. So that's what August 5 is about. And like Bruce rightly said, all this, the US, European nations, United Kingdom, and members of the international community, as they're called, respond, urgently when they can see smoke rising from this, rogue regimes, than when you write letters to them or you complain to them through their bureaucratic organs. They don't listen. But if you want your plier to be noticed, you better put boots on the ground. That's our position. But we are definitely very, very concerned about Kanu's situation, considering that he was kidnapped, which is the diplomatic and decent word for kidnapping is extraordinary rendition. And put in detention in Nigeria. That's unacceptable to us because we understand what this means, and we want to make it clear that we're not opposed to groups that are seeking self-determination. We just feel like a revolution would be ideal instead of breaking up Nigeria, into small ethnic enclaves. So that's it. And Dr. Chidi, I sent you a message already that my time might be up, but I want to thank Bruce Fein. I've been listening to him all day for putting these things in some of the best perspectives that we could ever listen to, and hear his very sound legal arguments about how we can put these guys in a place. Why he operates in the courtroom, I operate on the streets, and probably in the media space as well. So thank you, Bruce. Please keep up the good job. Yes.
Thanks.
And,
thanks so much.
You guarantee that we will support all your efforts that will help liberate Nigerians, liberate Biafrans, liberate anybody that is in bondage. And I guarantee you, a lot of people in bondage in Nigeria who are not even Biafrans. All across the country. In fact, there are Fulanese who are in bondage. And that might shock you because this is a rogue regime. While it feeds on the Biafran, they also feed on hapless other persons all across the country. So let's keep working together. Let's keep the pressure up. And Chidi, my brother, thank you so much for bringing me. And you are in safe hands. You're in better hands. I picked a lot of ideas from Bruce today. And one of it, that I really like is when he was talking about how Nigeria did not go through proper decolonization. Nigeria never goes through anything. They never do anything proper. Even if you go to the Olympics the other day, where they were supposed to put a male, they put a female and they mixed relay race. It's like, yeah, Nigeria is designed to fail, even in the smallest of things, in the smallest of places. That's how Nigeria is designed. But just leadership for me, it's just like we're saddled with these incompetent leaders all across the world. It doesn't matter whether you ask them to cook or you ask them to govern. They don't know what to do. But we'll keep talking, Bruce, and thank you so much for your sacrifice.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Moele Shore. Okay. Maz is okay.
Well, again, I think probably we'll be wrapping up, but having listened to everything and reading the documents, now I would be doing injustice to many watching now who have listened to this document in question and this suit without asking the following question. I mean, Bruce, do you have, based on these 12-page documents that you've now, that is a suit against the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, and the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, do you now have an idea of timeline when something is likely to happen, when, either decision, court processes, and also, do you have plans to visit Nigeria? I mean, maybe field work, investigation on yourself, or are you relying on local partners to gather information as regards to the evidences needed for the prosecution of this case?
Let me answer the last question first. Yes, I have plans to visit Nigeria as soon as I can arrange it. And indeed, meeting with Nnamdi Kanu and his Nigerian lawyers as well to ascertain directly information for the maltreatment and to ensure that we're on the same page. I've had communications indirectly with his lawyers, with Nnamdi Kanu, but nothing replaces a direct face-to-face communication. There's no chance then for misunderstandings or miscommunications. So I may see you in Abuja soon. With regard to the timing of the lawsuit, under our federal rules, the government has 60 days to respond to the complaint. Once there is a response, I think I would move for what I call a preliminary injunction. It kind of accelerates the case faster than otherwise, saying that it's very likely we'll succeed on the merits and there would be irreparable injury if the Super Tucanos are permitted to participate in the genocide against the Biafrans. But that 60 days sounds like a long time, but I can't change that rule. That's what the government is offered. If it's a private person, there's only 21 days to respond, but the government gets extra time. So that's what we're talking about in terms of when we can anticipate an answer from the government. Now, let's also remember that it's possible that the administration would change its mind because of the developments, not only in Nigeria, but opposition they're hearing from members of Congress. So we're working that angle as well. So it may well be that what the government would just concede that this was a Leahy Amendment violation and not deliver the remaining Super Tucanos and retrieve the 6 that have already been delivered but not yet commissioned into the Nigerian Air Force. Those are political developments outside the technical areas of a courtroom, but we think that the lawsuit itself could precipitate that kind of action. You know that the administration came in, been preoccupied in the short run with COVID-19, with many issues concerning Iran and China. So Nigeria hasn't been at the top of their foreign policy list. And I think the lawsuit kind of jumps Nigeria into the top category that needs attention. And we think if the policies of the administration under Mr. Biden are followed, they certainly would have second thoughts about continuing to pursue a transaction that was concluded by President Trump. If anything, the campaign showed Mr. Biden was opposed to virtually everything the Trump administration did, and there's no reason to think the Super Tucanos is different.
I have a quick question.
Sorry. There is a follow-up to this question, Chidi. Pardon me. You just mentioned now, the possibility of you going to Nigeria to meet with a client, face to face, as to avoid miscommunication and something being lost in translation. And we've recently seen 3 Israelis who came to Nigeria to make a documentary about the Igbo of Nigeria, and we are picked up by the DSS, or rather SSS in Nigeria, as it were. We have also seen the lawyer of Nnamdi Kanu in the person of Ejiofor, who was supposed to be in this conversation. And we've seen how his house was invaded and he feared for his life. Now, putting all these into consideration, do you think it is safe, knowing the Nigerian government and obviously the overzealousness of maybe some of the security agents, for such a trip to be embarked upon? What's your take?
But I don't want to be foolish. On the other hand, taking risks is part of living. Otherwise, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. And there are many Biafrans are taking far greater risks than I would traveling there. Certainly, these happenings that you've described signal, caution and vigilance. But there's ways that I think I can take protective measures that would diminish very highly the likelihood that anything would happen to me. I can't rule it out, but something could happen to me in the streets of Washington, D.C. as well. I don't want to kind of be boastful, but I certainly know that lots of people have to take risks in any political effort to get justice. And I can't expect others to do what I'm not willing to do myself.
Wow.
Thank you very much. So
yes, thank you, Mazes. Okay, I must really commend you, Bruce, for your last statement, because when you hear someone talk like that, I'm glad Mazes asked you this question, and I was touched by your answer, because your answer does not deny the fact that there's dangers involved. You addressed it practically, and that makes a lot of sense. So I really want to thank you on behalf of the people of Biafra for not just taking your professional responsibility, but being humanitarian in your approach. Now, while you were answering Mazes Oke's question, you mentioned about the possibility of retrieving the Tucano aircraft. And I'm wondering also, is there a timeline? Could you help us understand what the agreement is? Do you know the agreement between the United States government and the Nigerian government concerning the commissioning of these airplanes? Is there a time within which they are supposed not to commission it, and within which time it is possible to retrieve it?
Well, I believe, maybe in the next several weeks, the 6 that have been delivered are supposed to be commissioned into the Nigerian Air Force. Now, certainly, I don't think we're going to get a decision in the lawsuit that quickly. But there's no doubt that the United States has sufficient leverage over Nigeria to tell them, okay, we don't want you to make those planes operative until this lawsuit concludes, or we need further investigation. Or otherwise, the United States could seek, other kinds of sanctions, if you will, or limitations on our engagement with the Buhari administration. So there are a whole host of ways, I believe, given the power of the United States, where we could make it clear, if we wish to, that they should withhold making the Super Tucanos operative until there's been more time for deliberation and legal consideration.
Yeah, it was important to ask that question because I know you had talked about the 60-day period for the cost to review your injunction, and then now you've just revealed that the time within which the government of Nigeria may have to commission this aircraft falls within that 60 days. So that was why I wanted us to know. So yeah, it will be interesting and important to know those other measures that will be taken, since according to you, I don't think you're able to get like a preliminary injunction to kind of stop this action except after 60 days.
Yes, but think of this as well, that when they commission them, I think it will show that they are not going to be utilized against the Fulani herdsmen or the Boko Haram. It'll show that Mr. Buhari was gauged in a fraud and a pretext in insinuating that the aircraft were being purchased to use against international terrorists. And so they commissioned it. Well, then where are they? You know, where's the bombing of Boko Haram or the Fulani terrorists? Nowhere. So in that sense, it kind of works to prove our case of the fraudulent misrepresentations that he made in order to get the sale in the first instance.
All right, thank you. Mazes, okay, if we will be rounding up, so if there's any other question you have for Mr. Bruce, please go ahead and
I think
round up.
My next question is more or less on clarification here. You know, as it borders on issues that had to do with the Tucano jet. Maybe that's partly my ignorance, not knowing the clarification that I'll follow in seek to for answers. In these documents, I read about the use of these Tucano A29 jets, you know, where you have John Deere 1 to 7 as, you know, and individuals who lost their properties and sustained bodily harms. Question them, Bruce, here, pardon my ignorance here. If these Tucano jets are not commissioned, how were they used? No,
I think if they're commissioned, if they are commissioned, I think they would not be used against, as Mr. Buhari had represented, against Boko Haram of Fulani herdsmen terrorists. We know at present there have been aircraft repeatedly deployed by the Nigerian Air Force to bomb and kill and maim Biafrans in the genocide. They're already using an air campaign, if you will, in the Southeast. And there's no reason to believe that the Super Tucano wouldn't be used to replace the less modern aircraft with weapons that are more efficient at killing Biafrans and destroying the property. That's what we expect Buhari intends with the Super Tucano.
Does that answer your question, Mazes? Okay, I see you.
No,
no, because let me, I think your question, you think the document is saying that the Super Tucanos that were already purchased have been used. Isn't
exactly.
That what?
Exactly.
No,
but that's my understanding of that document.
No.
They've been delivered, but they've not been used yet. They may need some additional training or whatever. I
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, the ones, when I read about the A29 Tucano, Super Tucano, so they are not the ones that the 12 in question, 6 delivered and 6 yet to be delivered, right?
Yeah, they haven't been used, but other aircraft have been used in the genocide.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay. That clarifies it. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right, Mr. Bruce, I really want to thank you for the work you're doing. And I know your schedule is very crazy, but you were able to make out time at a very short notice to come and help us understand the lawsuit that you have instituted on behalf of the indigenous people of Biafra and Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. And we will continue to go through the document, and if there's any need, we would revert back to you, because there's so many questions that we're getting on the comments section that we're not able to deal with here. But please oblige us when we come back to you with these questions, either through email or direct contact, that you help us understand the document more. On behalf of, and I'd like to thank you, Mazi Ezeoke, for just jumping into the thing at the shortest notice. You always do that, and I appreciate you for that. Even though I still tell you that your head is a coconut head, and you still forgive.
Anyway, it's you know, you're just ending and you're saying it. It's fine. I know you would, you know, pay arm and a leg to have your hair look so like a nigger.
Oh yeah, but thank you so much, Mazi Ezeoke of Njenje Media, and thank you, Bruce, and we'll do this another time.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.